What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Elo Bandit, and today I'll be going over the entire history of Sun and Moon 1v1.
What's up, guys?
The next topic was the sleep discussion. Now, we'll come back and touch on this later, but this was basically singling out the main users of sleep strategies, which were Snorlax and Gengar and Jumpluff, and to a lesser extent Mega Venusaur. But this was discussion on, are these strategies uncompetitive? Should they be allowed in the metagame? And is one of them too overbearing?
I personally thought it seemed like people wanted to ban the status entirely because some Pokemon could abuse it, and it's just like, oh, I'd rather not have a metagame where sleep thrives and you can use sleep. And yeah, I just strongly disagree. I think that besides Snorlax specifically, all of the abusers of sleep were just not amazing, not broken at all, had a lot of opportunity costs, especially when you get into like Gengar.
Yeah, but once again, the argument for Gengar wasn't that it was broken or OP, but rather that it was uncompetitive and completely based around luck rather than any skill. Yeah.
And I guess it seems like it makes sense to not have it in the metagame, but I personally don't think we should have a metagame where you can just ban anything you want because it annoys you. I think we should definitely be like,
well, sure,
way
but
more
annoys you is
cautious
different from, quantifiably uncompetitive.
I mean, it just has way too much opportunity cost to ban, I think. And, I think a suspect wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world, but sleep really only was problematic in Snorlax, and you rarely, back then you never saw Mega Gengar in tournaments because people just really didn't start bringing it. You see it a little bit more now, just because people want to make a point, if you ask me.
And they want to cheese wins if they don't think that they can take whatever Game 5 or...
Yeah, I feel like if you have a core that's like really solid versus someone, you can kind of just slap a Gengar on there and be like, if things get out of hand, I can use Gengar to maybe cheese.
Yeah.
It's not a terrible idea. But Gengar just has way too much opportunity cost to be ban worthy, and I think and Snorlax was the main... I was really chanting this back then, that Snorlax is what we should go after, because that thing was crazy. We can touch on that later.
We'll come back to Snorlax, yeah.
Yeah.
But the big thing that happened in July after that was the Zeraora release, which basically replaced Tapu Koko as the premier electric type of the tier, running super fast Z Charge, Plasma Fists, and close combat. So Zeraora, it filled a niche that Tapu Koko had, and it's and to this day it's kind of remained as the fastest and quote unquote best electric type of the tier.
It's like a very defining electric type, super fast, can be really strong, stuff like that. Like
physical or special.
It actually, yeah, it replaced Tapu Koko pretty quickly, to be honest. But yeah, back then people didn't really use Zeraora that much. Wasn't developed very much.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. September, the Snorlax ban and 1v1 Ladder Tour 2, which was pretty closely linked to that ban.
I would love to talk about both of these things.
Go for it.
All right, so Ladder Tour, I guess I should say first, this was a very interesting tour where you can really see like this post-Coco metagame in action, and it was just really cool to watch. It actually had a very stacked like playoffs bracket. Like it was just very interesting, and a lot of like the first few weeks were me and my friends spamming Snorlax and just trying to abuse it, because we kind of figured at this point that Snorlax was kind of like quote unquote the best way to ladder, because you could really just like have two solid Pokemon that had a good matchup versus them, and then you can have a Snorlax, which if you pick wrong can still cheese them.
Yeah, it's like you win the matchups you win, and then the matchups you lose, you also sometimes
and more.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was just like, why wouldn't you run this thing? And back then we also experimented with Cursed Snorlax, a guy called
the main set. So the main set for Snorlax was fully the main set. HP defense, special defense, with Yawn, Protect, Belly Drum, and Double Edge, with Normalium Z.
Yeah, so it was basically a sleep strategy where you could put them to sleep, and then you could either just fire out really strong hits, or you could Z Belly Drum to get your health back up to 51%, or I don't know, 100, I think, and then you can go Belly Drum and then get +6 while they're asleep, and then you can just fire off a Double Edge, like.
Yeah, and a +6 Double Edge KOs anything that isn't a Steel type, and it KOs those Steel types, so you're even winning resistant matchups if you get lucky with sleep turns.
And that was a huge thing. It was just like it was an amazing abuser of sleep. But then Curse kind of popped up, and Snorlax's counterplay at that point was like rock types, steel types,
like
ghost
sub
types.
Metagross. Yeah.
And sub Pokemon, because sub can block out yawn, so they just fail, and you have a sub.
Yeah.
And it just put you in a really advantageous position if they yawned on your sub. You just like got a free sub and they can't do anything that turn. And but Curse totally like shifted this completely. Like now you could curse on Metagrosses, or you could curse on substitute Pokemon and just outlast them, because you had Curse and Amnesia, or Curse and Earthquake to hit maybe like Gengars or something. And you had Curse and like a healing move. You had Recycle Iapapa Berry with Gluttony, so you could just heal 50% pretty much whenever you wanted.
Yep.
And it was just like, okay, Yawn Snorlax was insane, and then you add a set that can reliably beat rock types, steel types, and substitute users, and Snorlax was absolutely insane. It got suspected with a closed vote mid-ladder tour. I believe it was banned after the second week. And it was unanimously banned, by the way. People just knew that this thing did not belong in the metagame at all.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah. So that just was a notable occurrence that Snorlax just got whooshed out of there real fast.
Yeah, it was pretty much targeted as the problem with sleep, and it was removed. Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, sleep discussion kind of cheated off, because at that point you're just kind of complaining about like Jumpluff and Swampert and Venusaur.
Yeah, it's like we hit the
Gengar.
thing.
It's like compare speed.
Yeah. A solution was put in place to some extent for sleep.
And I forgot to say this earlier, but about sleep discussion, people tried to think about, how do I counter sleep? And not necessarily, how do I beat these abusers that are all really flawed Pokemon?
Right, it's not about running Insomnia to beat sleep as a status, it's about running a Gengar check and a Jumpluff check, and, it's about matchups. It's not about the move or, like, the status.
Yeah, exactly. You just want to fight each sleep user individually. I think if you group them together, it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say about that.
Moving on to the Mimikyu ban. So this was a big event because Mimikyu was really, really over-centralizing at this point due to its unique Z move. Mimikyu and Z letting it use Let's Snuggle Forever, which made it a better check for Mega Gyarados. You would see the Bulk Up or Swords Dance Will-O-Wisp set used more often. You'd also see all forms of Curse sets being developed. Everything from Curse Ghostium to Curse Leftovers, Curse Mental Herb, Curse White Herb to prevent Rock Tomb. It was crazy. And you'd even see Mimikyus running Curse Thunderwave to speed trap things faster than it. Mimikyu was a problem. It had the RNG element of Thunderwave. It was beating too many things. You couldn't tell what set it was in Team Preview, and it really just had to go.
Yeah. Mimikyu just, beats so much stuff, and it can cheese stuff with, T-Wave plus Curse. That was the cherry on the cake. It was just okay, we need to get this thing out of here. On top of being incredibly, versatile and being able to, wisp a Gyarados and win, it can also just cheat, T-Wave cheese anything it really wants to.
Yeah. And it has a ton of choice in what Z-move it's going to use. We even saw Ghostium Mimikyu still in use at this point to bait in Metagross. All kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Alright, moving on to the Z-Detect Quick Ban. This happened November 24th and was reverted the following day. The council decided that Z-Detect was an RNG-based strategy and therefore should not be allowed in the metagame, so they banned it. And the community immediately responded negatively, saying that they wanted to suspect it and to have a voice in regards to what was allowed in the metagame.
This was not only a bad quick ban, but also I personally think getting rid of Z-Detect is a slippery slope in a sense that it sets a bad precedent when it comes to RNG stuff. Now you can justify banning Gengar, or you can justify banning Bright Powder, all this stupid stuff, even though these sets all have insane opportunity costs and are not consistent whatsoever.
They
you
are
can just justify banning them.
I'm going to throw out a 72% win rate, but they're more consistent than Hypnosis users, which was the comparison that I kept drawing at that point in time. They weren't more RNG reliant than other allowed strategies, therefore they should be allowed, was kind of my thought process.
There's just no reason to ban it.
Yeah, but we did run a suspect, and eventually the community decided in favor of a ban to just remove the RNG element from play. Okay. Moving on to January 2019. Sleep discussion part 2. This is kind of still ongoing, but as Dom mentioned, it's pretty much fizzling out now that the main sleep abusers are kind of gone. The big one that people are still talking about is Mega Gengar, and the only real argument is it's not good enough to be used consistently, but it's also good enough to use inconsistently and get some cheesy wins. So it's kind of a competition discussion, but it needs to be had, and at this point we're not going to suspect sleep, so it's kind of just reaching its end.
Yeah, it almost actually happened, but quote, spoiler alert, who became leader shortly after this, just didn't want it happening because Gengar was, I think he said it was trash, which is very true. Gengar sucks. Mega Gengar is not good at all, but it can cheese wins, and people just get upset about that after they lose on the ladder to it. And so, like, it kind of makes sense that people would want it gone. It doesn't really add a whole lot, but it just is not enough of a problem to be suspected, really. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so as you mentioned, the next thing to happen was the Immortal giving quote 1v1 leader. And we've seen
I
quotes.
like talking about this.
Yeah, go for it.
After you.
Oh, I was just going to say that we've seen Quote's leadership so far, and he's taken initiative to actually involve the community and set up the suspect tests, more so than past leadership has, where they more took the path of let's suspect things just in the council, and let's tell the community how we feel.
Yeah. I always want to add, love him or hate him, Quote is a very transparent leader, which I'm a huge fan of. Like, when the old council dropped a suspect, it was usually completely out of the blue. Like, maybe Deg would PM me and be like, yo, there's about to be a suspect, and I'd have to guess on what it was. But there was just not, like, a huge thing of transparency. You'd just kind of be surprised every time there's a suspect. But now you can talk to Quote about, like, in the 1v1 room about the metagame or about suspects or stuff like that. Like, it's just, he's a very transparent person, which I do like a lot. And yeah, this was just kind of a good step forward, kind of bled into the Kyurem-Black resuspect, if you want to talk about that, Bandit.
Yeah, so Kyurem-Black was resuspected, and this was really good because it was removed from the metagame, and that was generally considered to be a good thing. But the way it was removed was by Council Quick Ban, which overrode a community vote. So they decided the best thing to do would be to have another suspect for Kyurem-Black and have the community together agree that it was worthy of being banned. I think that was the best way to do this, and I am very happy with the result.
I am really kind of annoyed that it had to come to a resuspect, because at this point, the 1v1 player base was very different in 2019 than it was in like 2017 or 2018. Like, there's a huge shift. Kyurem-Black was kind of that banned boogeyman Pokemon that like new players were like, oh, this thing is banned, so therefore it is extremely broken. I'm not really thinking about why it got banned, or the fact that it actually stayed in the metagame after a suspect pretty clearly. And yeah, I just think that the new 1v1 player base didn't give Kyurem-Black enough of a shot. And 60% to unban this thing was like, you need a huge majority of the player base to like want this thing back. But I think the new players just really didn't give enough of a shot. And people were kind of abusing Kyurem-Black's cheese sets on the ladder, like Groundium or whatever stupid set that you wouldn't really normally see in the metagame very often at all. Just because you could use it and it was free points for a suspect.
Yeah, I think at some point there that it was a little bit of a new toy syndrome where people were using Kyurem-Black a lot, leading to it being over-centralizing, which led to the perception that this is everywhere, this is OP. So yeah, I do see that perspective, absolutely. However, I'm glad it was banned. I don't want to be in the metagame with Kyurem-Black. I far prefer the less centralized post Kyurem-B meta.
I miss the old QB, but I also miss Jirachi being in the metagame, because that thing was a huge surprise, because I thought this would absolutely not be unbanned, but it was.
Oh yeah, this came out of nowhere. I didn't even bother going for Rex on this because I just assumed that no one would vote in favor of keeping the RNG element.
Yeah, exactly.
It flies in the face.
This thing, I'm very glad to make it. Yeah, and the requirements to vote on this suspect were actually really hard. And I think maybe 10 to 15 people only got them. And RIJY made sure that those people were for unbanning it. And that thing got unbanned because of a very small sample size that we're just convinced it was enough of an issue. I'm very glad. I totally missed this thing. Like, I was so happy that this thing got banned or unbanned because I actually used it. And so I actually had a team or two that I could use with this thing back, and it was just really nice.
Yeah, I had a couple of fun Steelium sets with special attack they didn't use flinch at all, but they were really fun. So I'm glad I can use those again.
I'm very glad this thing's back in the metagame. People kind of assumed it wouldn't be, but because of the Kyurem-Black suspect. But now it's like, wow, this thing's back. It was really cool.
Yeah. And then do you also want to talk about the 1v1 ladder tour 3?
This was really cool for just I'm gonna point out one user in particular called Ravon, who I think was definitely one of the top 3 most influential 1v1 players, period, in SM at least. He pretty much invented Registeel plus Superior. Both of these were extremely anti-meta Pokemon at the time, still are. If you ask me, I think Serp is consistently top 10 in ladder usage, which is really cool to see. It was just a very monumental showing of, oh yeah, people run Scarf D-Knight now, people run Registeel, people run Superior. People started running banned Garchomp again, because back then people were mostly running Subgroundium. It was just kind of a lot of sets just kind of popped up out of nowhere, which was not really common back then. It was just a good metagame shift, and it was a cool tournament too.
Okay. And now, the point that we're at now is the Dragonite suspect. So that was announced October 22nd. And we've had a couple of days to go for Rex. I think, Dom, you already got him. And I'll be going for him this week or next week. And hopefully voting on that suspect test. So what are your thoughts on Dragonite right now?
I would absolutely love to talk about them. Dragonite, to me, is very comparable to Kyurem-Black. Not everyone sees this comparison. Not everyone sees eye to eye with me on this, but Dragonite just reminds me a lot of Kyurem-Black. I think there's a parallel though there, but I think it's more of a contrast. But I'll come back to that. I just think that in a Kyurem-Black list meta where we firmly established Kyurem-Black should not be in this metagame once it was banned and also just banned again, we established that these broken dragon types that don't beat everything, or that can beat really anything they want to, that they shouldn't be allowed in the metagame. So I don't see why Dragonite should be allowed in the metagame when it can pretty much tech anything it wants to, give or take, but it's a hard time with Gyarados, maybe Gardevoir, but those Pokemon really are not that hard to just
to cover with the rest
play around with other Pokemon.
Yeah.
They're not omnipresent enough for Dragonite to be terrible. Dragonite is a huge strain when you're looking at the team. You really don't know what set it will ever be, honestly.
I disagree with that. I think it's usually very easy to tell what the Dragonite set is most likely to be based on the team makeup.
I disagree. I think sets like Kyurem are kind of obvious.
Kyurem are obvious because the rest of your team loses to Steel types. Scarf is sometimes obvious because your team loses to Greninja. And if you're using just special Flyinium, then you're trying to lure fairies. So it's very, very clear if you're paying attention to the full team structure.
I think not necessarily. A lot of the times Dragonite users will just splash on their favorite Dragonite set on the team without really thinking about it that much.
That's
on the ladder, I think people 1v1 players, SM 1v1 players that just play all the time, really like guessing and being right about which Dragonite set it is, or which set this Pokemon is, or that Pokemon, specifically Zeraora also. Mm-hmm. And so they're not necessarily opposed to Dragonite, but I don't know. I just think it's very comparable to Kyurem-Black. And if we think
the main
that
difference between Dragonite and Kyurem-Black is the speed tier and the main items that they run. So Kyurem-Black, we saw a ton of Choice Scarf and a ton of ICMZ, and that had a very specific role in the metagame to outspeed key threats and to one-shot certain threats through Sturdy or Multiscale. Now Dragonite, he doesn't have Mold Breaker or any variation of that. He has Multiscale.
It's a better ability.
Well, not necessarily better if you're trying to one-shot.
Multiscale is better than Mold Breaker, absolutely.
Okay.
But
point being, it fills a different role. It often runs a very slow set. It often runs bulk and full offense. You see like max attack Adamant with a huge HP investment.
But with Dragon Dance or E-Speed, that's kind of good options for speed if you ask me.
Oh no, for sure. E-Speed is worth talking about because on every Z set you'll see E-Speed is the follow-up. So it does help Dragonite fill that role of the sturdy killer, and it helps him finish off things like defensive Charizards. But Dragonite and Kyurem-Black, you think it's Scarf because it probably is Scarf. Dragonite, it might be Scarf, but the only reason it's Scarf is if it's specifically trying to lure something. And if you don't have that thing, you're not worried about it. Every single Dragonite set has enough counterplay by itself. It's only when you treat Dragonite as the whole of everything Dragonite can possibly be that it seems overbearing on team building.
Black is the exact same way if you ask me. Every Kyurem-Black set, except maybe Icium, had so much opportunity cost, had so much counterplay. Especially
well, when you say opportunity
Groundium.
cost, that's just because they're not running Scarf or Icium.
It's the fact that they lose to so much stuff. Like, they lose to Steel types, they lose to Fairies, they lose to all this stuff. And it just had so much, like, opportunity cost, especially for cheese sets, and that's what people were kind of worried about. If Kyurem-Black didn't have cheese sets, I think it would still be in the metagame today. But, yeah, I just think they're very similar in the fact that they can be fast if they want to, they can be really strong if they want to, and what Dragonite doesn't have in raw stats, it can make up with priority E-Speed and Dragon Dance, personally.
Okay. So we'll move on to 2020 and beyond. We will have some verdict on Dragonite. The suspect will happen, and it will go through either ban or no ban. We will see, and Sun and Moon will continue as a metagame. And the future, we've got the Galar region dropping, no more Megas, no more Z-moves. You're happy about the removal of Z-moves.
Yes, and also Megas. Because I think Megas are absolutely awesome mechanic. I think they're really cool. They just add a lot, and they're just cool, to make Mawile and Charizard really good.
Yep.
They're also, like, kind of tired out at this point. I've played SM, and I've played Oras since the beginning. And I've just had enough of Mega Charizard and Mega Gyarados, like I'm ready for the future.
Ready for a change?
Hopefully.
All right.
Actually, I'm kind of not ready for the future because I think Dynamax probably won't be banned because...
I think it will be banned, but yeah, let's talk about that. Dynamaxing is the big new thing for Gen 8.
I haven't actually paid enough attention.
It makes the Pokemon big for 3 turns. It's going to be used on every Pokemon if it's allowed. And if it's not allowed, then we'll see, I think, a more balanced metagame. Given that only certain Pokemon get their special Dynamaxing, it's going to have weird centralization, and yeah, I don't know exactly what to expect from this new generation.
I think they're probably going to be super broken, but we're going to keep them because we're used to Z-moves. And I'm just kind of being pessimistic about it just so I don't get my hopes up and then the metagame sucks and I hate it. But I am interested in what the new gen is going to be like. But I'm also kind of cautiously optimistic, I guess, but not that optimistic because I really don't think that a Dynamax metagame is worth playing. But I don't know if the 1v1 metagame is ready to pull the trigger.
1v1 has learned its lesson from Z-moves because when you have
I don't think they have it all.
set of items that have so much centralization around that, when you put the same thing but even more, which is what I see Gigantamaxing as, why would you want to keep that? It's just more of the same broken mechanic.
Exactly. It's more of the same broken mechanic that people are already used to.
And play the metagame as is. Yeah.
I don't think people are ready to play a Dynamax free metagame. That'll just be Gen 5 to them. Oh no, an old gen, bro. I think people aren't ready to pull the trigger yet when it comes to a broken mechanic. Because Z-moves, quite blatantly, to me, are very restricting, super unhealthy, just not good for the metagame at all when it comes to actually metagame health.
Well,
but people think
about centralization, yeah. But if you're talking about potential for variety and fun, unique sets, then I think Z-moves are a good addition.
The big question to me in Gen 8 is, will we pull the trigger and get rid of this probably broken mechanic? That's, I think, something that's not going to be easy. But I'm ready to pull the trigger. I really want to see what the new metagame will be like without all this this stuff that I'm already used to, make a Gyarados and make a Charizard. Get those guys out of here. I've played with them for 6 years, bro. I'm ready for these guys to head out.
All right, so that pretty much wraps up everything that we wanted to talk about in this video, everything from 2016 to 2020. Thank you all so much for watching. Huge thanks to Dom for joining me on this episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Bandit. SM is going to be an old gen in like a month. That's crazy.
That is kind of crazy.
Are you ready for that, bro?
I'm ready. All right, I'll see you guys later.
We'll be right back.